This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for September 24th, 9 a.m. We got a lot to go over this morning on Tropical Storm Matthew. Let's start with the HurTrack program and put it in motion, and you'll see it approaching the coast of Honduras and Nicaragua. And then this evening, around 8 o'clock tonight, it should be around 60 miles per hour, approaching Cabo Gracias a Dios, which is our current feature at Hurricane City. Just click on Cabo Gracias a Dios next to the tracking chart, and it will take you to all the localized information, radars and whatnot. There's no webcams from this area, unfortunately, so you can't really see what's going on, but you can track it with other information, including local news. That information can be found at the link at Hurricane City. And then, of course, if we continue on in motion, this skirts the north coast of Honduras and then moves back into the Caribbean Sea near Belize, and pretty much starts to slowly slow down and then park itself over the Yucatan Peninsula and near Guatemala and just drifting north into the Yucatan. That's the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. There's quite a difference in spread in the models at this point, and I'll get to those scenarios in just a minute. Now, the hurricane hunters are flying out there right now. These are the latest wind barbs from them, and we're showing 45 knot winds here. That's out of the northwest on the back side of the center of circulation. So we definitely have ourselves a strengthening system. The east side winds aren't as strong here. We're talking around 40 miles an hour, 35 to 40 miles an hour on the east quadrant. But this is definitely getting better organized. I'll show you a floater loop in just a second. Here is Cabo Gracias a Dios, and this is on the very northeast tip of Honduras and Nicaragua, right where the border is. And you'll notice there's a canal that runs here separating Honduras and Nicaragua. And Cabo Gracias a Dios is right in here, and there's quite a few residential homes and whatnot in this area, but there's really not much down here in Nicaragua. But the forecast track is taking this right through Cabo Gracias a Dios as it skirts the north coast of Honduras. And they'll get some gusty winds, but not a whole lot to be concerned about here unless this really rapidly turns into a hurricane, which it could still happen. I'll get to the scenarios on that. All right, here are the models on this system. Pretty much split between land and staying offshore. The GFDL keeps it offshore and then has it hanging a right-hand turn heading north in the western Caribbean Sea. The other models are all spread here, lingering it inland here. Some of the BAM models take it south and then back into the Pacific and then back into the Atlantic later in the period, because there are some models that indicate there's going to be another area of low pressure develop over here in several days, along with Matthew moving north. So we'll have to see what happens with all that down the road. But I ran all the models, 59 different model runs on Matthew, and using Chris's Tropical Atlantic just to see what the differences are in the percentages on I broke it down into three categories. Just touching the Yucatan Peninsula, turning east and north. The other option is lingering down here in Central America, and the other option is the Bay of Campeche. Out of the 59 model runs, 45% of the models keep it over land here for an extended period of time. The other 45% of the models keep it east, touching the Yucatan and then bouncing back out into the western Caribbean Sea, and only about 8% of the models actually put it in the Bay of Campeche here. So it's a contest right now. Half the models take it into the Yucatan and park it, and the other half keep it just east of the Yucatan and strengthen the system. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But the best performing model on this is I think, yeah, this is it right here from Chris's Tropical Atlantic. This is the best performing model. It's the GFTI, which is the GFDL model using the GFS tracker interpolated, which there's additional data thrown into the GFDL from the GFS model. And this indicates that it's going to, just like the National Hurricane Center forecast calls for, but rather than go inland, it stops right here and then backs up and starts heading northeast and then back northwest again toward the Yucatan. So that's a pretty interesting track. But this is the best performing model, off by about 36 miles at 48 hours. Out of all the models, this is the best performer. So we'll see how that, if this pans out down the road on this system. Now, the best intensity model, I'm not showing you this because of the location of where the Canadian model expects Matthew to be in 5 days. It shows it pretty much parked over South Florida, but The reason I'm showing you this is the Canadian model is the best performing model on intensity. And the intensity forecast is only off about 1 or 2 knots at 48 hours. And looking at this graphic here, you can see that this probably has it as a strong tropical storm or a minimal hurricane at this point, approaching South Florida as it bounced off of the Yucatan and then came up like this. So that's the best performer as far as intensity, not necessarily track. I don't want to confuse people with that, but I'm showing you this simply to show you how strong this could potentially get as a potential hurricane up here. All right, what are all the past storms in history that were in the same exact location between September 23rd and September 25th? Where did they go? Well, 1941, a major hurricane slammed into Cabo Gracias a Dios, moved through Honduras and hit Belize, Guatemala, and moved into Mexico. And I'm sure there were probably a lot of fatalities from that, but that was a major hurricane moving in there. And again, this is the same exact time of the year, so this is good reference. 1941, an unnamed storm moved in like this towards Belize and dissipated over in here. So these are the only 2 tracks this time of the year, basically west-northwest towards Central America. I also have another page of in the drop-down menu right above the hurricane tracking chart at Hurricane City. Look at all the storms that developed in the same exact grid in the Western Caribbean Sea, east of Nicaragua. And I'd say about 80% of these storm tracks do eventually take it north, although most of these are in early October, but pretty close to this time of the year. No, most of these tracks do eventually go north or northeast out of this location. In fact, Mitch did that, went into Honduras, after becoming a Category 5, dumped a ton of rain there, and then went northeast and eventually hit South Florida on the way into the Atlantic Ocean. So this is a popular area for development for systems to turn north. All right, here's the upper level winds from the University of Wisconsin, and we have the high pressure ridge just off to the northwest of the center of circulation on Matthew. So it's causing a little bit of northeasterly shear over Matthew right now. But if Matthew finds its way underneath this high pressure ridge, it's going to be completely favorable for development of Matthew. And this could very well ramp up into a hurricane somewhere in here, especially if it stays out over the water. So it's very favorable coming up in the next day or two. In fact, I think I have some shear maps to, well, I'll get to that in just a minute. But here is the elevation in Honduras and Nicaragua, and the higher the elevation is, the more it can disrupt the center of circulation. Right here we have 3,700 foot mountains, which are not really that high. It's pretty flat over here in northeastern Honduras. Then you get over here near Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras, and you have 7,500 foot high mountains in here and 7,400 foot down here. So if Matthew takes a southerly route, these mountains are really going to disrupt it down here, whereas if it stays along the coast or up here, it won't get torn up that much due to the higher elevations that'll be off to the south. So that's something to keep a track on. This, again, this map can be found by clicking Cabo Gracias a Dios next to the tracking chart and using the navigation bar to the left under Maps. Here's the heat content in the Western Caribbean Sea from the Hurricane Research Division. And you can see that this is a 78 degree isotherm map, meaning temperatures of 78 degrees or warmer that are able to support a hurricane well below the surface of the ocean. So if you have a system here that's stalled out, which this might do, and linger around, it can tap into those warmer waters underneath the surface. And look at them here. We have some very warm temperatures way below the surface in the northwestern Caribbean Sea. So this has a lot of energy. If it makes that turn to the north and northeast, it's got a lot to tap into here in the western Caribbean Sea. And here's the steering flow from SIMS, and I want to point this out. This is about the 700 millibar level, and we see a high pressure ridge right in here. And notice how it's a very elongated high pressure ridge, so that would allow the weakness to begin when it gets on the left side of this high pressure ridge, and that's why the models are indicating this is going to turn north right near the Yucatan Peninsula. There's an obvious weakening, and that's going to get enhanced over the next few days by this trough that's going to enter the east coast of the U.S., and that's going to create a weakness to allow this to move north into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Here are the actual temperatures from the Navy, and we zoom in on this a little bit. You can see these are temperatures upwards of around 85 degrees in some of these areas up in here. Look at these temperatures. This is all the potential future track of temperatures out in front of this, and it looks like a little eddy up in here spinning around. But these are the warmest waters in the Atlantic Basin right now are down where Matthew is headed, so we got to keep an eye on that. This thing could explode in a hurry if it finds itself in a favorable environment. Here are the current upper level winds, and again I noticed mentioned the upper level northeasterly wind shear, which are the aqua areas, and the purple and pink areas are very favorable. Now let's go out to the next frame, which is 48 hours from now, and you see it's pretty favorable down near Belize and the southern Yucatan, but then we start to see a little bit of increasing wind shear out of the west up near Cuba. So maybe this is a trend coming up. If this did decide to make it up near Cuba or South Florida, maybe the wind shear would start to tear this up a little bit. We'll have to see about that. But still, we're only talking about 15 knots of wind shear, not anything dramatic. So it just depends on how well organized the system is when and if it gets up that way. All right, let's take a look at the Matthew models from TropicAtlantic.com, and these are the early cycle models, mainly the global models, and they're all indicating basically strong tropical storm Cat 1, even going out 5 days. The outlier here is the SHIP model, has it getting up near major hurricane status in about 96 hours, which would be when it would potentially be heading towards the United States or over the United States, and or near Cuba anyway, and this would be around 120 miles an hour. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But again, the Canadian is the best performer on intensity, and that's not graphically shown here. But now if you look at the early cycle models, which are mainly the aviation ensemble models and the tropical models, they're keeping this as a tropical storm all the way through for the most part, and I guess that's figuring there's going to be a lot of land interaction. The GFDL is the strongest with it at 63 knots going out 5 days. The other models here, the aviation ensemble models, all keep this down around, let's say 35, 40 mile an hour tropical storm, and that's indicating it's going to be tangling with land. All right, here's our floater, the visible shot of our system, and a very well organized, nice swirling banding features going on here. And again, you see the banding like this and inflow coming in. This is approaching the coast pretty quickly here. Again, by this evening, this will be on land, and we'll have to see how much it tangles with the mountains here in Honduras as to how much this strengthens or weakens, depending on how much, whether it stays over land or not. My hunch is it's going to move inland like this and then come out like in a fashion like this. So it's going to have to tangle with these mountains down here, and this might dissipate or become a very weak tropical depression here just near Belize. We'll have to see about that. All right, let's take a look at the water vapor loop. And again, here's a trough coming in from the west, and the trough is what's going to start turning this to the north. There it is right there. And then there's another reinforcement that's coming in behind that, so it's a timing issue as usual. But we have our high pressure right here that's steering Matthew to the west, but this high is going to eventually break down. The steering currents are going to collapse, and the system's going to start drifting north. It's just a variation of models. Some take it like this, some take it due north. We just need to watch this carefully. Nobody needs to be alarmed. Just keep an eye on this system, and we'll keep updating this as this system develops. You can keep track of it at hurricanecity.com for the latest information. Again, click on Cabo Gracias a Dios for the latest from Honduras and Nicaragua. That's it for now. Thank you for visiting Hurricane City.